Welcome to chapter 10, the book of Isaiah, a chapter that I believe is pretty much what Isaiah is writing about is what's going to happen fairly soon. I don't see anything tied into the book of Revelation or a later time. And so with that, we'll go in to this book. It says, Oive, in the Hebrew, to the ones writing wickedness. For the ones writing are writing wickedness. Now, I'm not exactly who he's talking about here that are writing the wickedness. It says they're turning aside equity of the poor and snatching away a judgment of the needy of my people, so that a widow would be to them for ravaging and an orphan for plunder. Well, that may have happened then, but I think it also happens today. I had a friend quite a few years ago that had a garage with about 4 feet of gravel and dirt before it hit the concrete for the alley. And when the person had to drive into the garage, they had to go over to that dirt part and the gravel, and they wanted to fill it in with the concrete to meet up with the concrete or the blacktop in the alley, whichever it was. So at the time, we were going to a mega church in Southern California, and there was a magazine that was supposedly a Christian magazine, and people would advertise in it for all sorts of things, buying things, selling things, jobs, services, and you have it. So this person saw a concrete layer, somebody that lays the concrete and smooths it all out. So he called the person up, and person came out and dug around where they put the concrete all the way the length of the garage and walkway on both sides. So it was maybe 40 feet wide by 4 feet, not a whole lot. So then when the concrete came, they poured the concrete, and the concrete came up to about 4/5 of the way, and then it ran out of concrete. And he smoothed it all out, except for where it stopped, and it went straight, went down like this, and that 4 feet was open. And so this person gave him the money for doing the job and figured they would come back and finish it. But apparently what that person was doing was buying ends of concrete trucks that had poured their concrete for someplace else, a big job, and they had some concrete left over. So that's apparently what happened here, and they ran out and wasn't enough to do the whole thing. Well, did they ever come back and finish the job? No. So this person had this open 5 or 6 feet of open area behind the garage. And this person was advertising in this Christian magazine. So taking advantage of people here, well, you're taking advantage of a poor or a blind person and tripping them or doing things like that are really terrible. But it also happens in other ways that people take advantage of other people. And there just doesn't seem to be any bottom to what people can do to lie and deceive for other people. We see televangelists that beg for all kinds of money, but yet live high on the hog, have many houses. I saw one that I knew that friends of mine had a house next to an extra house that this televangelist had, and had many of them. So this is using God for plunder and ravaging, as far as way I can see. And this was going on in Israel at that time, Judah. And it continues. And what will they do in the day of the visitation, the episcopes, overseeing the day of the episcopes, the overseeing, episcopos, an overseer. And we have the Episcopalian Church, comes from that. The overseer was God. The day that he comes and we pay for what good and bad things we do in front of the judgment, then what are they going to do? I think the terrible things are going to happen to people that do that. And if you are one of these, hopefully you're not watching here, and you are, but if you are, the best thing to do would be to stop and not to do that. Be satisfied with whatever God gives. For the affliction shall come to you from a distance, and to whom shall you take refuge for help? So these people are going to be taken attacked by the Assyrians, as we'll find out here. It's at a distance from Babylon, quite a ways away from Israel. They had to come around the Fertile Crescent up north and all the way down into Israel. But they did. And where will you leave your glory? To not fall into enslavement. So these people that are doing the evil things, how are they going to escape? How are you going to escape the judgment of God? For they shall fall underneath the ones being done away with. So the people that are being punished will fall with other people that are being punished by God. And for all these things, his anger shall not turn. Orgy comes from that, the excited state. But still, his hand is high, still going to do things more. It's sort of to a double-edged sword here in this chapter. He's doing things against a lot of the Jews that are doing wrongly, and then the Assyrians here that are now coming. Then he uses them, but then he shows that he is going to punish the ones that he uses to punish the other ones that need to be punished. If that makes any sense. Woe, oy vey, to the Assyrians. And the Assyrians, as we mentioned, were the peoples that were up in the northern part of Mesopotamia, up towards Turkey, Iraq. Those were the Assyrians. And it says, woe to them, the rod of my rage and anger is in their hands. And the Assyrians is in the dative, but woe to them because the rod of his rage is in their hands, but they're going to be punished also. I will send my anger against a lawless nation, and to my people I will give orders to cause spoils and plunder, and to trample the cities, and to make them into dust. Now, I believe here he's talking about Assyria doing that. But he did not ponder thus, and the soul did not consider thus. Now, who is he? Assyria, possibly there? But he shall dismiss his mind even to utterly destroy nations, ethnic, not a few. So this is what Assyria is going to be doing. And if they should say to him, well, you alone are ruler, then he shall say, well, did I not take the place above Babylon? And Halanes or Chalanes, don't know where this is. The King James, I think, is Calno, and nobody knows for sure what he's talking about here. They think it's above Babylon, that in the area of where the Assyrians came down and did take Babylon, and then these Halanes may have been close to that, where the tower was built. And I took Arabia and Damascus and Syria. So Assyria went all the way down and took Arabia. Then they went up and across the Fertile Crescent down into Damascus, and eventually down into Samaria of Israel. In which manner I took these, I shall take all the sovereignties. Shriek, O carvings in Jerusalem and in Samaria. So he's coming, and it says shriek, the carvings. This were the idols that they were making. The Jews had these little idols in Samaria, and they were also in Jerusalem. For in which manner I did to Samaria, he ended up coming down and taking it, and its handmade things, so shall I do also to Jerusalem. God may be saying this as he's using Assyria to attack when they made these handmade idols. and to her idols. And it will be whenever the Lord shall complete all his doings on Mount Zion and Jerusalem, he will strike against the great mind, against the ruler of the Assyrians, and against the haughtiness of the glory of his eyes. So when he's done using the Assyrians, then he will strike against them. For he said, the Assyrian, I will act in strength, and in the wisdom of understanding I will remove boundaries of nations, ethnon. Well, he didn't. God is the one that's allowing this to happen. He's using the Assyrians, but the Assyrians think that they are the ones that are initiating it. If you don't believe in God, then you look for nations, and you look for the nation that you live in to protect you and give you things and provide and all sorts of services. The more socialistic the country, the more the services and all these things. And people expect this is because of the nation state. God no longer is considered. And this was the same thing with the Assyrians. They were considering themselves as being in control of everything. And then they said, and will despoil their strength. And he continues, the Assyrian does, and says, I will shake the cities being inhabited. And I will overtake by hand the inhabitable world. I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to do it as a nest. And I will lift away as eggs being left behind. And there is not one who shall evade me or contradict me, even opening a mouth and chirping. Nobody is going to stop me. I am going to do what I want to do. And the height of the Assyrian pride is all being shown here. Shall the axe be glorified without the one beating it? Or shall the saw be exalted without the one drawing with it? Likewise shall any lift a rod or wood, and it not be thus. But the Lord of hosts sends for your honor dishonor. So all your beating, it was done by God. And the sawing, it was God is doing the sawing. The rod, beating, or lift a rod or wood, it's God doing everything. People have a hard time with that. They believe that they are in control. We have control of hardly nothing. We do have free will. We can walk away from God or obey God. As far as personally, we can do that. But we can't add an inch to our height. We can't add a day to our life when we are called to be leaving this world. There's nothing we can do to stay here. And we didn't have anything to do with when we came. We can't control our health, accidents, nothing really. Can't get hit by a asteroid and the whole civilization would come to an end immediately, or a volcano, tidal waves. But the Lord of hosts sends for your honor dishonor to Syria. They're going to be dishonored. You think you're honored, but you're going to be dishonored, and for your glory, fire. By burning it shall be burnt. Now, I'm not exactly sure what is referring to. And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and he shall sanctify her in fire being burned. Now, I'm not exactly sure if he's talking about Israel being burned. That would be sanctifying it by burning it, and then afterwards it would be able to grow and become new again. Or he's talking about the Assyrian. And it shall devour the woods as grass in that day. The mountains shall be consumed, and the hills and the forests, and it shall devour from soul unto flesh. I think it's the Syrians coming down and what they do. And it will be the one fleeing will be as the one fleeing from a burning flame, and the ones being left behind of them will be a small number, and a small child shall write them, that is, count the number. So after the Assyrians come down, it won't be a whole lot of people left. A lot of people will be taken, which did happen here right after the end, towards the end of Hezekiah. And if Isaiah is writing at the beginning, so it's going to happen soon. And it will be in that day, no longer will the one being left behind of Israel proceed, and the ones being preserved of Jacob no longer should be yielding upon the ones wronging them, but they will be yielding upon God, the Holy One of Israel, and in truth. And the one being left behind of Jacob will be relying upon the God having strength. And if the people of Israel should become as the sand of the sea, the vestige of them shall be preserved. Now, if there's anything that may be talking about Revelation, it may be those few chapters that at the end there will be a vestige, which means the 144,000. For the matter is being completed and being rendered concise in righteousness. For the Lord is the one rendering the matter concise. The Lord of the forces shall act in the entire world. So here it sounds like it is, let's see, the entire world, and that is in Romans 9:27 and 28 that this uses this quotation. On account of this, thus says the Lord of hosts, do not fear my people, O ones dwelling in Zion, from the Assyrians. For with a rod he shall strike you, for he brings calamity upon you, beholding the way of Egypt. In Wikipedia has a good article here on Sennacherib, and it says in 701 BC, Sennacherib turned from the Babylonia, where he was at, to the western part of the empire, where Hezekiah of Judah, incited by Egypt and Marduk Apla Edina, had renounced Assyrian allegiance. The rebellion involved various small states in the area. Sidon and Ashkelon were taken by force, and a string of other cities and states, including Vivlos, Ashdod, Ammon, Moab, and Edom, then paid tribute without resistance. Ekron called on Egypt for help, but the Egyptians were defeated. Sennacherib then turned on Jerusalem, Hezekiah's capital. He besieged the city and gave its surrounding towns to Assyrian vassal rulers in Ekron, Gaza, and Ashdod. Sennacherib, however, never breached the city. Hezekiah remained on his throne as a vassal ruler. So I believe this is what he's talking about here. It says, for yet a little time, and I will cease the anger, but my rage is against their plan. He's still going to use them, but the end is coming. And the Lord God of the forces shall arise against them according to the calamity of Midian in place of affliction. That's, the King James has the rock of Oreb, and has to do with Joshua and the rock of Oreb. You can read about that in the book of Joshua. And his rage is the way by the sea into the way according to Egypt. So he's going to Egypt. And it will be in that day, I shall remove his yoke from your shoulder, and the fear of him from you. And the yoke shall be ruined from your shoulder. So he's not going to take Jerusalem, basically, is what I think he's talking about. For he shall come into the city of Agag. This is, in the King James, is called Aoth, and nobody really knows where this place is. It's not on the map. It's questioned. And shall go by to Megiddo. And Megiddo is about 20 miles north of Jerusalem. And in Michmash, about 20 miles north of Jerusalem, he shall place his weapons. And he shall go by the ravine, and shall come unto Angay, which was the same spelling as before, but in a couple of manuscripts, it has Avlistirion, which is like a sheepfold, a place for the cattle and animals. So I'm not exactly sure. That's a question there. Fear, Phobos. Remember I mentioned that whenever you see the Phi, Omicron, Vita, which looks like a ba, but it's va in Greek. Fear shall take hold of Ramah, which is 5 miles north of Jerusalem. The city of Saul shall flee, Ramah. Snort a sound of yours, phonein, a phone sound, is a derivative of yours. Thigatir of Galim, it's a mile south of Ramah. And Laish shall take heed, but this is probably not, the King James spelling is not what it is. It's probably Lysah, which is just north of Jerusalem, right next to Jerusalem. And it's called Lysah, and which goes along with the Greek Lysah. They shall take heed in Anathoth, which is right next to Jerusalem. And Madmenah is startled, which is south of Jerusalem. They probably worried they're coming down their way, which they were towards Egypt somewhere. And the ones dwelling in Gebim, which is next to Jerusalem, they're going to be worried because of what Sennacherib is doing. Enjoin them today to abide in the way. Enjoin them in the mountain, the daughter of Zion, and the hills in Jerusalem. Behold, the master, despotis, despot is a transliteration, the Lord of Sabaoth, puts in disorder the honorable ones with strength, and the haughty ones with insolence shall be broken, Assyria. And the haughty ones shall be humbled, and the haughty ones shall fall by the sword, and Lebanon will fall with the haughty ones. Sennacherib went back and couldn't take Jerusalem. When he went back, he was killed by his sons. So the end of Sennacherib, and Jerusalem is protected. Next is the root of Jesse. We know of that from the New Testament, and we will go and find out more about what Isaiah has to say about the root of Jesse in our next seminar. I hope you'll join us, and God bless.